Welcome to the Fusion Mastery course. In this lesson, we'll be talking about setting user preferences. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to change user preference settings and turn on preview functionality. At this point in time, we've taken a look mostly at files. We've learned about the data panel and how to create projects. We've also learned how to open, close, import, and export files through Fusion 360 as well as Fusion Team. Before we move on to any other topics, I want to talk briefly about user preferences. Now, the reason I want to talk about user preferences is they're important for how you navigate throughout Fusion 360, as well as some various default options. To get to user preferences, go to the top right-hand side of your screen, use your name dropdown, and select Preferences. Now, inside here, there are several different areas that we want to focus on. The first is the general area. Now inside here, there are various options for things like recovery save time, the cache period, as well as default modeling orientation. You can also turn on or off things like tooltips, command prompts, show in-command errors, as well as A360 notifications. As you get more comfortable with Fusion 360, you might decide to turn tooltips off, as well as things like the in-command errors and warnings. One important thing I want to focus on in here, because most of us will be coming from another CAD system, the pan, zoom, orbit shortcuts. These can be set to Alias, Inventor, or SolidWorks in addition to Fusion. You can also reverse the zoom direction, which is a really nice option depending on what system you're coming from. Let's take a look at some of the other preferences. In the General section, let's navigate to Design. Now, as we look here, there are various options that'll start to make more sense once you get comfortable. We have Active Component Visibility. Now, when we're working with components and we select the little radio button to the right of them, this will change how the other components behave. The Design History. Notice that Capture Design History for parametric modeling is on by default. We can turn it off by default or have it prompt us. Also, the default workspace set to Sculpt. This is the workspace that is automatically entered when we imported that IGES file. If you want to use the model workspace or the patch workspace, you can set those as default as well. There is an Allow 3D sketching of lines and splines here. As we get more comfortable with sketching inside of Fusion 360, you'll learn that all sketches are both 2D and 3D. We're going to be mostly exploring 2D sketches, but depending on the types of models you might want to work on, allowing 3D sketching of lines and splines can be very helpful. There are also other options like Edit Dimensions when created, Show Ghosted Result Body, as well as Auto Project Geometry on Active Sketch Plane. Again, as you get more comfortable with Fusion, you might decide to turn some of these options on or off depending on how you like to model. Let's explore some of the other preferences. Feel free to explore each of these sections on your own, but some of the ones I want to explore are data collection and use. These are also important because these allow Fusion 360 experience updates. Now, what I mean by that is being a part of the desktop analytics program as well as Google Analytics allows the Fusion 360 team to take note when things don't go right. Now, if there's a crash or if a tool isn't working properly, these can be very helpful in making sure that those problems get corrected relatively quickly. One of the great benefits of Fusion 360 is just how quick updates and fixes happen. You no longer have to wait months for something. You can simply get a fix if there's a major problem or even a minor problem within a few days or weeks. Let's take a look at some of the other options. I want to take a look at the default units. We have to select a subcategory here. Design, CAM, and Simulation can all have different units. Under Design, the default unit is millimeters. We'll talk a bit more about setting units and resetting the default, but if you like to work in the inch system or some other unit system, you can set the default here. The last thing I want to mention while we're in here is Preview. Again, with Fusion 360, the cloud computing and cloud storage, you've got amazing power, and you also have these options called preview functionality. Now, I like to turn most of these on, and we're going to talk about most of these individually. Sketch colored geometry. Now notice when you click the first one, it's going to ask you to sign up for Fusion 360 Preview. I'm going to select Sign Me Up, and this puts you into the preview program. It allows you to look at these preview functionalities, test them out, and give Fusion 360 team feedback on how they're working or what you'd like changed. Notice that we have live review, and this is essentially allowing you a web meeting. And again, we'll talk about all these individually. The mesh workspace, simulation, as well as branch and merge. Now, we're not going to be talking about branch and merge because it is a closing preview. This will be baked into the software at some point in the future, but most likely it'll go back, receive some changes, and get pushed into the preview functionality at a later date. Depending on what changes you've made, you might need to select Apply and then OK. At any point in time, you can always go back to the user preferences, make any changes you want, and simply apply them. So at this point in time, those are all of the preferences I want to talk about, but there are many more in there that can drastically affect the way that you model and the way that your environment and your workspace is set up by default.